Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to It's Time for More Injury Funding, the podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in the personal injury, tracking law, workers' compensation, medical malpractice, and all other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding, and heart for all suffering individuals. In today's episode, I have K'Lee Terrazas, the powerhouse behind Legal Elite Sharks. She works exclusively with law firms, helping them scale through smart, ROI-driven client acquisition systems. With deep expertise in Google Ads and intake optimization, Kay knows exactly what it takes to turn a click into a signed case. She's seen firsthand where firms are burning ad spend with little to show for it. And she's here to share the strategies that actually move the needle. Let's get into it. Welcome to my show, K'Lee.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So let's start with you telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how did you come to the idea to start your own firm?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm K'Lee with Legal Lead Sharks. We are based out of Oklahoma City. Where I stumbled into the legal niche, if you will, is I've been running a digital marketing agency since 2016. Prior to that, I was in B2B sales, primarily medical B2B sales and investing. A broad background in sales. When I came into marketing, I was doing jack of all trades, I think, as marketing companies go. In digital marketing, kept getting clients that would come in with specific needs, specific problems. I kept growing my knowledge on how to service my clients, a lot of times acting like a fractional CMO in most cases. And I had the privilege to work with several personal injury attorneys. And my husband also, several years ago, had worked as an account management for personal injury lead generation. And it was just an interesting correlation between how this all came to be. But one thing I learned about personal injury specifically, and we service all law firms, all verticals, personal injury just tends to be the most expensive and the most competitive in the marketing space. And I found really quickly they have a lot of bottlenecks that I have the experience to be able to help them solve. Most Google Ads agencies that work with personal injury are either the big jack of all trade companies and master of none, or on the flip side of that, they know Google Ads really well, but they have no idea what happens after the click. And there is a big process to turn the click into a signed case for law firms. And that's essentially what I really narrowed down into. I started reading books on how to scale law firms. I started working with more lawyers as the referrals were coming in and realizing they were all having the same problem. And it was, they're getting a lot of clicks. But what's not happening is those are not converting into signed cases. And in every situation, I figured out what the bottleneck was and how to fix it. And so that's what led me to really several years ago, is almost 2.5, close to 3 years ago, really honing in on law firms and going just for law firms from that point forward.
That's wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Let's jump right into what you do, why those law firms need you so much. Let's talk about client acquisition. What strategies, K'Lee, can personal injury firms implement to improve their rankings in Google Ads and the map tag?
That deals directly with two things. The first thing is you've got to know your numbers. And I have a mentor and coach, like any good business owner should, who scaled not one, but two Google Ads agencies to 7 figures. And one thing that he said, I interviewed him a while back on my podcast. One thing he said was, it's as simple as this: the people who know their numbers win. And I will tell you really upfront, I have almost never come up to a law firm that knows their numbers properly. And in that, you can't hit a target you can't see. So it doesn't matter how great your Google Ads account is or how efficient it's running if you don't know what's working and what's not working. So that's all strategy and optimization within Google Ads. The second bottleneck that almost every single law firm that I'm working with faces is, once that click comes in, what happens next? What happens on the intake acquisition part of it? And that was another big miss that we went in, and all the clients we were working with, we helped them solve that there was no intake system in place. People are answering the phone. Everything was inconsistent. There wasn't any consistent strategies and scripts and templates, et cetera, and tracking to see who's doing it well and who's not, and how many of those clicks are actually really good cases that just slip through the net. So it's knowing the entire ecosystem of how it comes in as Google Ads. So the strategy behind the actual account, all the way to getting that case signed and in front of a lawyer. The magic is in the middle, really. That's the short answer.
Yes, I love it. And actually, K'Lee, you just reminded me, personal injury attorney Golden Farb in Florida. So he is really heavily focused on KPIs and ROIs and numbers, and he's doing so well. I think he's really not just in Florida, he's a nationwide speaker. He travels all around the states, and he said that's what the good progressive law firm does nowadays. Thank you for the answer. How can businesses effectively use Google Ads to target potential clients within their locality, within their territory?
The most efficient way is, I've read Mike Morris is another one that knows his numbers, and he is scaled to being the personal injury law firm of Detroit. And it's in large part, and after reading his book, I would have known that anyways, but after reading his book, and it's co-authored by his COO, he knows his numbers, and he knows within a very small percentage what they're going to do the next year. And that's the reason he is at the top of his game. That's the secret behind it. But in large, it's being in one of his last chapters, he said, be Cherry Garcia, not vanilla. And I love that, because in marketing, everybody sounds the same. Everybody looks the same. And the winners are the ones who stand out, and they're the Cherry Garcia and not the vanilla. So in Google Ads, that's a little bit tricky because we're very limited on the amount of spacing that we can get in there. But being able to target people with a brand as the personal injury lawyer, and not just another generic, if you were in a car accident, call us. That's really the secret behind it, is being able to give your value factor of why they should call you over the other 50 personal injury firms within throwing distance of them.
So on the moderate side, probably it's definitely more than that. I love it. Let's talk about data tracking. We started conversation on that a few seconds ago. What are the key performance indicators or KPIs that personal injury firms should monitor to gauge their marketing effectiveness?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the very first place I look when I'm on a discovery call or doing an audit of someone else's Google Ads account because they're not happy with how it's going, they think it could be going better. The very first place I look is conversion tracking. Is the conversion tracking set up properly? Because essentially it comes down to this. Google Ads is a AI machine. And the better the input, the better the output. So the smarter the machine is, the more it knows, oh, this person, we followed it all the way through. They signed the case. I need to look for more of these people, like a client avatar, a lookalike audience. So if I clicked on a personal ad, Google ad, and Google could see the entire life cycle of me signing a case with that firm, I'm the ideal avatar. So it's going to go look for more people like me. Conversion tracking is almost never set up properly or fully to where that entire system is feeding back into the machine to make the machine smarter. So that's the biggest indicator to me of if they're working with a really good Google Ads agency that knows what they're doing or not. The second place I look is the search term audits, because in the search term audits, what that's telling us is when you're running, let's say a personal injury firm's running $50,000 a month in ad spend, which is very common in that space. That's in the lower end of the budget, which is a lot, but it's very competitive. If the ads agency has them on what I would call autopilot, they're not going into the search term report and seeing, is this a personal injury lawyer that doesn't handle immigration, that doesn't handle family law, that doesn't handle criminal law? What Google searches are they getting? Because notoriously, no matter how smart you have this machine, it's going to pull in a lot of trash traffic at that amount of ad spend. If their agency is not monitoring that very closely, odds are pretty good they're blowing thousands of dollars a month on irrelevant searches. And they're not giving that machine learning back. This was the wrong search. This was the wrong search. This was the wrong search. And so unfortunately, not only did they just waste thousands that month, but next month it's going to continue wasting money because it doesn't know who it's looking for.
Very interesting. Quick question from, let's say, I know that I think Instagram nowadays with the AI progression, it shows that in my chat, a couple of these people show up as leads. However, they're really a connection. So I've noticed that not too long ago, maybe a month or so ago. And so I reached out out of curiosity more than anything. And of course, I know most of these people I already know personally. So I say, hey, how you doing? Let me know if I can help with anything. Or do you have a client that can possibly assist? And they said, no, we're good right now. Or yes, we have somebody. How do you know that these leads that your system or you personally generate actually become signed cases?
So that's the offline tracking piece, the conversion tracking that most firms don't have set up. They don't have the feedback loop, which, without getting into marketing lingo and a bunch of technical terms, for lack of a better word, they don't have the code set up to follow that lead from when it clicks to when it goes to the intake to when it signs the case. They don't have that full lead back to Google telling it, okay, we got 800 leads or clicks this month, but of those 800, these 30 turned into a signed case. Look for more people like these 30. They don't have that conversion tracking set up to go back into Google. And so Google is flying blind, essentially. They have no idea. And again, that's where having a good ad agency is one thing. They may have a pretty decent account set up, but having an ad agency that knows what it takes to work a workers' comp case versus a motorcycle case versus a dog bite case, they have no idea. And that's really where I've set myself apart and spent years researching more about personal injury. Like at this point, I'm like, I need to go into partnership and open my own firm with a lawyer at this point. I feel like I know so much about running a law firm, but they don't know. I know, right? But they don't know what it takes after the click. And so you have two people working in tandem together, an ads agency and a law firm, that have no communication loop. So what I see most often is the law firms will get this really fancy end of month report that they don't know how to read, because let's all be honest, just like legal, I don't know how to read that contract. It's at some point you're like, is this even English still? I'm not sure what I'm looking at. These Google ad reports are the same way. CPC, CTRs, TROAS, like bidding strategies. What are you talking about, basically? So essentially, law firm owners are looking at this report and they're like looking for green or red. I don't know what this means. And so you have, it's if you hired somebody to work on your team, but you never spoke with them and you had no idea what they were doing, if what they were doing was working. That's how a lot of ad agencies are running alongside personal injury. And that's a big problem, because you have two voices that aren't communicating with each other to say, a workers' comp case is less valuable to my firm than a commercial trucking case or a death case. And so that ad agency doesn't even know when they're targeting people. They can see 18 workers' comp cases signed and think, I'm doing amazing. When the law firms, those are like keeping the lights on cases for us. What we really need is XYZ. And there's no communication loop to keep the ad agency in the loop on what to optimize for, because they don't understand what's happening after. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, or hopefully didn't too techie on you.
No, that's perfect, actually, because I had that question for quite a while, actually, in the back of my mind. So that was a perfect opportunity to ask and get that question answered. So I really appreciate it. And hopefully that will explain to many of our viewers and listeners of what exactly you do and how do you differentiate from your competitors in the market. K'Lee, how can data track and enhance the decision-making process for law firms?
That is the key metric that they would need to know if something, in simplest terms, is something working or not working. And so within your ads account, there's got to be constant testing going on behind the scenes. And at a high level, you don't really need to know about that as a law firm owner. But if your ads agency is not doing that and you're on this autopilot, they set up the ads and they're just running them, that's where you're going to lose the longer game. I like to explain Google Ads is like playing, if you're a chess expert, right? You're like a grandmaster at chess, but you only know, and someone's saying, okay, but we're playing Monopoly. You know what I'm saying? So Google Ads is essentially a bidding game. It's a bidding war, and whoever knows how to play the game is going to win. And like my mentor said, Austin, it's the simplest answer I can give you is the people who know their numbers win, and your ads agency can't know your numbers without seeing what's happening after they send you that call or that form fill. And that's where everyone's flying blind together. The law firm owner is not sending back they don't have that data feedback loop, and the ads agency doesn't know what's working and what's not working. And so they're going to continue to just run the account thinking everything's great until the law firm owner gets with them after 9 months or a year and is like, these leads suck. And then at that point, how much time have they wasted and not knowing and being on the same page? One of the things I like to do with my clients is we have a tracking form. So every call that comes in, there's a drop-down box telling me, was it a qualified lead or not, is the first thing I need to know. And if not, why not? Is it because it was the wrong law vertical, which a good friend of ours, Chris Rose, in Legal Flare, has now been able to monetize all of these irrelevant leads for law firms. Reach out to Chris if you've got a whole lot, if you're running a big marketing spend, odds are really good that you're leaving money on the table and leads that may not be relevant to you, but someone else. And again, I'll refer back to the book Fireproof by Mike Morris. He was when he was little, he couldn't afford to compete against the big guys, but he was basically essentially getting referrals from, he calls him Sid. I don't know if that's his real name or not, but he was the top dog at that time. And Sid would say, I'm running probably around $900,000 a month in marketing spend. So he is casting a major net, and just whatever comes in, he's sifting what he wants, the catastrophics, he wants the commercial injury, etc. And then all of the lesser valuable cases to him, the slip and falls, the workers' comp, he was referring out to the small guys, like at that time was Mike Morris. So Mike said 70% of his income at that time was coming from Sid, offloading all of these invaluable cases to him. And then he was working them like $1 million cases, and he develops his reputation, Mike wins. To say it shortly, that's the feedback loop I get. I have my clients tell me, if this is an irrelevant case, why? Were they in the wrong state? And what state were they calling from? Because I negative those out, but I need to see it. If you're in Georgia and we're getting a lot of Texas traffic, one, why aren't you referring those to Texas lawyers and making money on the back end? And two, like Chris Rose, right? Why aren't you monetizing that? You already paid for this. You might as well pull them in and refer them out. Or two, were they not injured? Were they at fault, et cetera? So that I can go in and tweak the ads to make sure that I'm doing the best job I can to softly pre-qualify these leads through our marketing.
Brilliant idea. Thank you for sharing this. All right. Question. So intake EQ. What is EQ? Equalizer? What is EQ?
It's a play off of words. So IQ is based on your intelligence, right? A scoring of take a test and your IQ is XYZ. Who is emotional intelligence. And I named it that because, again, the biggest bottleneck I'm seeing was if I'm running a highly optimized Google Ads account and we're getting really good quality leads, the problem we were facing was the intake was not converting these leads. And so the lawyer's thinking I'm doing a bad job. When I started listening to the call recordings of these intakes, I immediately identified what was happening because I can see what people are Googling when they clicked on our ad. And if they're Googling file an insurance claim, or I just had an auto accident, that's the best we can do. That's the prime person. We got you exactly who you needed. So if that's not converting, I needed to know why.
Let's talk, K'Lee, about intake EQ, the emotional intelligence. What are some, and I did a little check here before our conversation today, looked into some numbers and percentages. So can you tell us what are some reasons behind of unanswered Google Business Profile or GBP calls, and how can law firms address this issue?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in running a large amount of Google Ads for clients, I was really quickly able to identify the bottleneck is either people aren't answering the phone at the law firms or they're not doing it well. In simplest terms, I had a law firm owner who, of course, I would hope that he loved his intake team. It was a very small team of 3. So why the 28% are going unanswered? It's a staffing problem. And it's expensive to find intake agents, and they're typically high turnover rates, and you have all the human factors, right? They're having a bad day, they called in sick, whatever the case is. Or they've taken so many calls that day, they're just done. They're like done. They're done hearing people's problems all day, basically. And we developed Intake EQ, which is a voice AI system. It sounds like a real person. And I named it EQ because it has emotional intelligence. Our agents are empathetic every call. They can handle 100 calls at one time. But if someone's in an accident and they're scared and they don't know what to do and they need help right now, that it's urgent, we need consistency in the intake process to make sure that these leads are, one, they're being answered, because 28% in unanswered calls, that is anywhere from, if you're running Google Ads, that's anywhere from $100 to $500 call you just missed because your call center didn't pick up on time, and they are 100% not going to leave a voicemail. They're going to hang up and they're going to click the next ad. And so you just lost that to your competitor. And even worse so, if this was a really valuable client, that could have been millions of dollars in settlements that you just lost by missing that phone call. And so it took us a lot of time to get these agents to be able to be as efficient. And they even have background typing noises and call center noises. We needed them to sound like real people, and we needed them to be very efficient and consistent. And so that's where we developed Intake EQ to make sure that even if it's after hours, nights and weekends, anytime you get a call, that call needs to be handled by a real person, or in this case, your AI agent, and it needs to either be booked on your calendar and they know that you're going to be calling them the next morning, or it needs to be transferred immediately to someone that's going to take that and turn that into a signed case. It gets so granular that like the call needs to be answered within 3 rings. That's how urgent these cases. It is so competitive and you're spending so much money on your marketing. The efficiency piece of this has to be locked in that tight. So that's really where we developed this. And the AI agents are bilingual in up to 6 languages. And I've had several clients who were unsure about using this system. Within 2 days of transferring the calls to the system, they were qualifying the calls. They were sending the qualified calls to be signed as a case. Like that was the transfer. It was yeah. And it was so efficient that they actually let go of the call center that they were using. And then obviously are starting to think, why do we need intake in-house more than just 1 or 2 people who are taking the calls to assign them as a case and get them to the lawyer? We don't need a huge intake team. When this can handle all of our calls and it works 24/7, 365, and we don't have to pay payroll, HR, PTO, it's always in a good mood.
Yes. So it's interesting. You mentioned that we make quite a few calls to our law firms because when the client reaches out to us directly for legal funding, whether it's cash advance, medical funding, or post-settlement funding, or any type of, if they need a surgery or physical therapy, any type of medical help, financial, from financial perspective, we have to verify that information with the law firms. And so when we call the law firms, a lot of times, I would say every third law firm nowadays has a third-party answering service, and it's terrible. It's stressful and very stressful. So I understand very well what you're saying, and I'm so glad you're here in this space to help everybody out. We really appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to our next question. In what ways can law firms improve their initial intake process to capture more potential clients? And I know you went over this, but just to summarize it.
Yeah, so we actually offer scripts that they can train their law firm intake on. But again, I will refer back, Intake EQ solves that problem for them. Unlike a call center, which I 100% agree with you, I would rather leave a voicemail. Like it just wastes more time to speak to a third party. And you know it's a third party, and they're almost never US based. And so you're talking to somebody that's not here. And it's frustrating and it's annoying. At that point, I would have just rather have left a voicemail. With our agents, you get to bypass the training because we prompt the agents to be an expert at your law firm. So if you do personal injury, family law, and immigration, this agent knows who you are. They know your brand, they know your tone, and they know what you do. And so they can quickly and efficiently ask questions, get the lead. All of that's imported directly into your CRM automatically from the call. Their name, their phone number, their email, everything. And then either book them on your calendar or get them a live transfer based on what we've trained it to do. So we train it, if this is a case, live transfer. And somebody at your law firm, I don't care if it's 2:00 in the morning, better be taking that live transfer because they're ready to sign a case with you. And then all other things that agents know, book this on the calendar for the next morning, right? Maybe this is a client calling back for help and they already work with you. That's fine. We just need to book them an appointment for the next day to speak to their attorney, the paralegal, whoever's working their case. So it is 100% more efficient and not frustrating because you get the tone of somebody that feels like they actually work at this law firm.
All right, let's talk about one of the most important questions for any law firm, specifically for personal injury law firms, is intake process. Why is the intake process often seen as a bottleneck in client conversion for personal injury firms?
We answer that in two ways. One, missed calls. Missed calls is missed cases every time. And also I've heard of firms losing clients because of the lack of communication. And they will basically terminate their contract and go with another law firm. Primarily, a missed call is a missed case. And then secondary is exactly what you said. Just like you call and you're frustrated talking to a call center, so is somebody that is urgently seeking help. If they just got into an accident, their whole world has stopped and they need to speak with someone now. And it's almost insulting to go to a call center where someone's just getting your name and information and not getting you the help and answers you need right away. So I think those are the two biggest bottlenecks of intake. Aside from the fact that, again, and this was an internal intake team member that I called, I was blind testing one of my clients because, again, he said, my ads aren't working. And I thought, that's not possible. I can see the data, your ads are working. So I decided on a weekend to give his firm a call and see what happened. And I was about to say, I shit you not, but I'm telling you, like, I was dumbfounded when I called the firm. They answered hello. And I looked at my cell phone thinking, I must have dialed the wrong number. And I said, is this XYZ law firm? And he said, yeah, how can I help you? And there's kids playing in the background. And I thought to myself, no need for further testing. If I was just in an injury, like an accident, I expect a certain level of professionalism from law firms. And that was after the 14th ring, no voicemail. It just kept ringing and ringing. And that was his team member internally. It wasn't a call center. So that is the number one bottleneck. And most attorneys are wearing too many hats to check this. And when I started listening to some of their call recordings and just sending that back to them and saying, review these 5 calls, essentially my recommendation would be, you need to fire these people immediately. They're not doing their job well.
Yes.
But that as a business owner, that's something that they need to do, but they're not auditing their system. And that's why it's broken.
So K'Lee, you recently hired Jason, your husband, to work with you. And let's talk about the operational scale at this time. Can you explain how Jason's transition into your business took place and how his background in payroll services benefits your operational processes?
In the book Traction, I'm not sure if you've read it, it's one of my favorite business books. And he talks about in a business, you have a visionary and an integrator. I'm the visionary and Jason's my integrator. So I've been running my marketing firm for a long time. And I knew I needed an operational piece to it. And he's been in sales and operations, if you will. He was with Homeland Security for 10 years as a regulatory inspector. So that's how operational he is. And then he's been in sales as well. So I pulled him over this year to join the team because I needed him to help me scale. I needed him to take over the operations piece to be able to make sure that I can stay focused in my zone of excellence. And he had come out of payroll, HR, and payment processing. And I last week spoke to an attorney that has 15 employees. It's $1 million firm. And he was up until midnight running payroll. And my question to him was, why are you wasting time on a $10 task instead of the $1,000 an hour task of growing your law firm and being an attorney? And for a couple $100 a month, he offloaded that entire compliance piece and all of the work that he had been putting into us being able to help him with payroll and HR. So it's just almost like a synergetic merge because law firms are businesses. And if you're wasting time on $10 an hour tasks, you're your own biggest bottleneck in scaling. And so any way that we can help law firms offload their intake, their payroll and payments processing onto us, that frees them up to be in their zone of excellence, which is being an attorney and running a firm that's scaling.
So Jason, how does shifting a lawyer's focus from administrative tasks to strategic growth impact the overall efficiency of a law firm?
I think that is best said, and there's several good books that I've read from people who have gone from nothing. They didn't step into a law firm. They graduated law school and had to build it from the ground up themselves and go through the entire 30 years of trial and error and learning how to do this, because in law school, they teach you nothing about business. And if you want to be a solo practitioner, a lawyer, that's great. They educated you on how to do that. But if you want to be a law firm owner and scale a law firm, it takes business knowledge and being able to put the right people in the right places to do that. And so I would say it frees them up. Like I said, with Mike Morris, when he hired John, he was able to be the attorney who is winning these major settlements and now has over 300 employees, wearing the hat of managing 300 employees. That's what his team does. He wears the hat of, he is his brand and he is the attorney that wins, and people know to call him. So I would say that's how it frees them up, is you get the right people doing the right things and you focus on being the visionary that scales your business, and not the $10 an hour task of answering the phone or hiring another intake person or whatever the case may be.
This was, again, so great. I hope our discussion about Google Ad secrets for law firms would turn into signed cases was informative and educational. And as promised, here's a fun pop question for K'Lee. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. If you had a theme song that played every time you walked into a room, what would it be?
Oh, man.
Don't think about it too long now.
I think Run This Town by Jay-Z. That would be it's fun, it's poppy, and it's like, I'm not in this to be another person in the crowd. Like, I'm in this to forge my own path kind of a song.
I love it. Great choice. Amazing. Yeah, again, that was K'Lee Terrazas with Legal Lead Sharks based in Oklahoma City. I want to thank you all for listening and watching our episode today. For more tips and tricks on legal funding and personal injury law, medicine, related topics, follow me, download, and subscribe to Sign for More Injury Funding podcast on several podcast platforms worldwide, and follow More Injury Funding on all social media, Google's business profile, and my website at moreinjuryfunding.com. I can't wait to see you, my dear listeners and viewers, on my next episode. Until then, be well. Thank you so much.